great group. I feel good energy. Yes, so let's ask once more. How many people here have barriers? Okay, yes, all right. I think almost all of us do. You know, we do so much work on ourselves, and still somehow barriers keep coming up. And I find that many of them fall into about 4 different categories. They're either criticism, they're resentment, they're fear, or they're guilt. Those are the 4 ones we work on mostly, the ones that really are in the way. Yes, let's take a nice deep breath. And if you brought any stuff in with you, just let's let it go for the time being. I've been sort of my eyes going in many places, seeing what's happening. I'm letting all that go now so that I can just be here and concentrate on being with you. And we've come to let things go. We've come to let our barriers go. We want to find out something that's a little bit different that perhaps we didn't know before. Okay, each one of us has come here to let something go. And let's just know for ourselves that we're willing to release, we're willing to let go. And it doesn't have to be a struggle, and it doesn't have to be difficult. And we don't have to listen to old echoes of the past, because if we hear them, we'll just let them go. We're here to learn something new, and if each one of us gets just one sentence today that can help us improve the quality of our life, and that's magnificent. Can you think how wonderful it would be if every single day we got one sentence of something that would help us let go of the past or bring something new in? Because, you know, all we're really working on is our understanding and awareness and knowledge. And it's no good beating ourselves up for the stuff that we don't know or where we are. It's much better if we put that energy into learning what we can about ourselves and seeing what we need to dissolve. I think one of our big problems is that most of us haven't the faintest idea of what we want to let go of. We know what's not working and we know what we want in our life, but we don't know what's in the way. So what I want to do today, one of the things, is to help us look at what holds us back. What is holding us back? And I find that many of the things that really hold us back fall into the area of criticism, resentment, fear, or guilt. And if you think for a moment about your own patterns and your own problems and the things that hold you back, which categories do they fall into for yourself? Maybe they fall into 2 or 3. Is it fear that always comes up? Is it guilt that always comes up? Is it resentment? Are you very, very critical? What is the thing that is your barrier? Now remember, our experiences always reflect our inner beliefs. And if you want to know what your inner beliefs are, you can literally look around at your experiences. If you look at the people in your life, if you look at all sorts of things, you can see what you believe about yourself, because all of our experiences reflect our inner beliefs. And some of them are wonderful, and these are the things we work with that help us really flow in life. And some of them are very negative. Some of them are old-fashioned, they're worn out, they don't even make any sense in our life now. They're things that perhaps we learned when we were 2 or 3 years old, and we're still using them now. But the biggest blocks of all are the 4, and I'm going to keep repeating that. Criticism, resentment, fear, and guilt. These are the things that really get into our way. Now, I know that you've heard me say many times, or you've read or listened on the tapes, that loving yourself is the most powerful thing we can do. Then everything flows. Everything flows beautifully. Now, I'm not talking about vanity or arrogance, because that is not love. That's always fear. I'm talking about just really respecting and appreciating this incredible, magnificent being that we are. You know, little babies know how to love themselves. You were born in pure love, all of you. There's not one little baby alive that I know of that ever criticizes its body or ever says, my hips are too big. Have you ever heard a baby say that? They're just thrilled and delighted that they have a body. And they rejoice in it. And they love themselves. They love their toes. They love everything about themselves. They absolutely adore, they express their feelings. You know, when a baby is happy, you know it. When a baby is angry, the whole neighborhood knows it. They're never scared to let people know how they feel. They live in the moment, and they're filled with courage, and they're wonderful. And we were all like that. Got to remember that you were filled with courage, and you were full of love, and you adored yourself when you were very little. And then what happens is we start to grow up, and we start to listen to people that were frightened or critical or resentful or guilty. And many of us grew up with people like that. You know, if you grew up in a family where there was criticism was the norm, then you're going to grow up to be a critical person. You're going to look at everything in life as with criticism. And you probably criticize yourself and other people. And you won't enjoy life nearly as much as you could. If you grew up in a family where you were not allowed to express anger, then either you're a person who is terrified of anger, or you swallow it down all the time and you let it sit in your body. If you were raised in a family where everybody was manipulated by guilt, then you're probably going to do the same thing. You're probably a person who runs around saying, I'm sorry all the time. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And you can never ask for anything outright because you always want to manipulate somebody. But these are old family patterns. And it's very easy to blame our parents, and it's very easy to blame our childhood or our environment. But the problem with that is that it keeps us stuck. We don't get to be free. We get to stay in our victim thing. And that's no good for anybody. Then we just get to keep having our problems. But remember, you're in charge now. Doesn't matter what your parents said. Doesn't matter what anybody else did. Doesn't matter what you learned. What really matters is what you are choosing to think and say now. Because you're the only person that thinks in your mind. And you choose your thoughts. Now, I can tell you lots and lots of wonderful things. But if you don't choose to listen to them, then they're not going to work at all. So you are always in charge, and you're creating your world and your life. Now, I've known that one of the most powerful affirmations you can use is, I love and approve of myself. I love and approve of myself. And when you first say that, it's amazing what can come up and come to the surface. Lots of times when we begin to say that, all the negative messages come to the surface. And it's marvelous because that gives us an opportunity to know what's been in the way. You see, if you don't hear your negative messages, you don't know what's in your way. So when you start to do an affirmation like, I love and approve of myself, you want to really pay attention to what the negative messages are, because they're the ones that are in the way. And when you find a negative message, if you could write it down, it's wonderful, because you want to think, I found a treasure. This is something that's really in my way and really creating a problem. Remember, we get to choose the way we think, and we can choose to change the way we think. It's always our choice. Now, what I'd like you to do right now is take out those little mirrors that you have. I know everybody has a little mirror. Okay, good. Now let's see if you can look in your eyes without primping. See if you can manage to do that. I want you to look in your eyes, and I want you to say, I love you. I love and approve of you exactly as you are. Okay, now just begin to notice what you're feeling. Don't judge it, just notice. What are the feelings that are coming up? Are they feelings of joy? Do you feel wonderful about yourself? Are they feelings of criticism or negativity? Don't judge them, just notice what's coming up. Acknowledge the negative message. Just acknowledge it, and you can always say, thank you for sharing. And realize that the negative messages that are coming up now are very much the things that are in the way of you loving yourself. Okay, what I want to do right now is let's do just a little bit of sharing. Okay, I want to know what sort of messages are coming up from you. Yes.
Fear.
Who would be upset if you really loved yourself?
Me.
No. It always goes back farther.
Okay.
Who would be upset if you really loved yourself?
My parents.
Your parents. Which one? Both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
Mostly
my
what was
mother,
the family message?
Always judgmental, always...
Okay, so you came from a
enough.
critical, judgmental, resentful family.
Right.
Okay, fine. So you're
And
a wonderful
fearful.
and fearful. Oh boy, you really got it all. Okay, it just means that you have a little more to work on. You know, I really think that some of us are very young souls, and we come here and it's like going to kindergarten. Life is really very simple. And some of us are much older souls, and we pick tougher tests, and it's more like going to graduate school. But you know, you can do it. It's just that you've chosen perhaps a little more difficult things to overcome. But see, it's my belief that the main thing that we really come here to work on is loving ourselves, in spite of what they say and in spite of what they do. And that's what we really need to do. So, okay, you've got things, you've got judgment, you've got criticism, you've got fear, probably a little guilt in there too. Okay, then I like to always think of that we can go beyond our parents' limitations. You know, they had a limited way of looking at life, and you were a very good little child, so you learned what they taught you. See, a lot of us think that we're bad and we're not good enough and we're no good, but actually we're ideal, wonderful, loving little children, and we learn exactly what our parents teach us. Not always what they tell us to do, but we learn from them. And we learn exactly what they do, and we grow up doing the same thing. Okay, that's wonderful. Let's have somebody else. Who else wants to share something from the mirror? Yes, over here.
I didn't really think of anything when I looked in, but when you asked just to sit back, I felt that it wasn't real.
It wasn't real.
That this whole exercise, I mean, I was looking at myself in the mirror, but I thought, this isn't real, it's not. It's just a pretend exercise. I just felt like it wasn't real.
Okay, yes. Is it the first time you've ever done that? Look in a mirror and say, I love you.
Yes.
Okay. You know, a lot of people, when they first do it, you start getting the barriers and the resistance up. And that's okay, because remember, resistance is the first step to change. You know, you want something different out there, and then somebody says to you, oh, but you've got to change. And you go, oh, me? No, I'm not going to do that. Or they say, you know, if you really want to have life wonderful, you get to forgive. And they go, no way am I going to forgive. So our resistance comes up, and this is a good thing because it's the very first thing that happens when you do that. All right, so how many people felt it wasn't real and it was just a pretend exercise? Only a couple. How many people got angry? How many people got sad? Yeah, lots of sad. You know what happens? When you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, for the first time, that little child inside says, where have you been all this time? I've been waiting. And these waves of sadness come up. Because remember, you've probably been rejecting that little child for a long, long time. Okay, let's have somebody else.
Immediately I felt like, how could I love someone this fat and this ugly and be so awful, and, you know, that I did it. I do everything
What's so
wrong.
awful about you?
That I'm fat and ugly.
Besides, you said fat and ugly and awful.
Yeah. Because I do so many, I guess because so much of my past, I did so much so wrong, you know, where
Well, it sounds to me like ever since you were a little girl, you've been trying to survive in the best way that you could and trying to protect yourself. You know, excess weight usually has something to do with protection. And it's a time when we're not feeling as safe as we could be. And so we put on some protection to take care of ourselves. But if we make ourselves bad for that, then we stay stuck and we never get to feel safe. But you know, I've noticed in my own life, and I'm a very slender person, I have little tiny bones, that when I'm not feeling safe, I will put some weight on. And at the moment, my life is going so fast and so furious and so incredible that I've realized I put on about 7 pounds. And I said, okay, Louise, we've got to work on safety. We've got to come back and really know that we're safe and it's okay and I can do all this stuff and I can be all these places and I can have all that's happening right now.
I was very scared, very, very scared.
Okay, so see now, it isn't, the weight is really an outer effect to a fear that's inside. Do you know what you're frightened of?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you share it?
I'm an incest survivor, and every time I get to those issues, it just is so frightening.
Yes, okay. Well, you know, a lot of us have had that, have come through an incest thing. And it's interesting that so much of it goes on the planet. But the thing is, in order to go through, get out of it, we've got to go through it. And we have to remember that the feelings that come up are just the feelings that come up. It's not, we're not in the experience now. And one of the things that I find is very helpful for this is if you would create a meditation for your child. Connect with your little child inside and create a meditation for this child where it is absolutely safe. You know, I had incest as a child too, and I've done a wonderful meditation with my little child. First of all, she has a fairy godmother. Fairy godmother looks just like Billy Burke in The Wizard of Oz, because that's what appeals to her. And I know that when I'm not with her, she's with her fairy godmother, and she's always safe and always taken care of. She also lives in a penthouse way, way up with doormen and 2 large dogs and, and all sorts of things that make her feel safe, so that she knows that no one will ever hurt her again. And she feels absolutely safe. And when I can make her feel safe, then I, as the adult, can help her go through releasing the experiences. So when you can do some work on your child, I think it'll be wonderfully helpful. Okay, that's good. But see, you look in the mirror and it immediately brings up what is really there. That's why I love the mirrors. And it's either going to be, I tell you, fear or criticism or resentment or guilt. And you have a good, strong fear thing. Okay. Take a deep breath and just be real proud of yourself for having all the courage that you have. And of course, you know, the thing we really need to work on is forgiveness. And that's the one that's really, it's hard for everybody, but some of us have made it harder than other times, you know. And sometimes when you're dealing with something like incest, it's hard to really believe that the other person was doing the best they could at that time with the understanding and awareness and knowledge that they had. And I find it's very helpful when we've gone through difficult childhood experiences to learn as much as we can about that person's childhood. Because remember, no matter how badly that person behaved at that time, they were born a little baby in pure love. So what happened to them along the way?
It's like I went through the anger and then I went through forgiving them, and when I see them, I really am happy to see them. But for me, and I heard their stories of what happened to them, which was truly awful. Mm-hmm. But now it's like I can't get over this hump of where I am now, you know, to forgive myself for my reaction since then, for being so angry with them and for not forgiving them.
You were doing the best you could to survive and to protect yourself. And now that you've done a certain amount of stuff, you can do something different. You can find a more positive way to do what you're doing. Let's have a couple more. Who else?
I really had no problem with the saying I love you. I don't know why, but when it got to approve of myself just as you are, yes, it was history. I couldn't even say it out loud.
Okay. So you have lots of things that you don't accept about yourself at the moment.
Apparently so.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, this goes straight into the criticism thing. You see, when you're dealing with criticism and you criticize yourself, all you do is stay stuck. It keeps you in the place. If you think about it, the things you're criticizing yourself for now are the same things that you criticized yourself for years, right? Same stuff. Well, when were we going to learn that it doesn't work? It doesn't work to criticize ourselves if we're going to change. That doesn't work at all. So let's try another tactic. Let's approve of ourselves as we are right here and right now, so that we can then bring out the best in ourselves. You know, if you think of a little child and you start yelling and screaming and criticizing it and telling how awful it is, that child is going to shrivel and will either run around with tantrums or will be very, very quiet. And you're never going to know what that child could be like. But if you love that child and praise it and tell it how wonderful it is and how perfect it is right at that moment, then that child will blossom. And the stuff that can come out of that child will be just incredible. And it's the same way with ourselves. The things that you probably don't like about yourself right now are things that, patterns that you've created to deal with something. But if you come from a space of loving and approving of yourself, then you're going to find more positive ways to fulfill those needs. When you love who you are, you automatically bring out the best in yourself. Now, I'm not saying we become better people, because lots of people talk about that. They say, oh, I want to become a better person. And I always say, well, don't say that, because that's implying that you're not good enough. And the very thing we want to overcome is this not good enough feeling. We want to really acknowledge how wonderful we are. And it doesn't matter. Remember, when you were a tiny child, you wanted to be loved and accepted exactly as you were. Maybe you were scared, maybe you were skinny, maybe you were overweight, maybe you weren't as bright as your brother or the person across the street, and you didn't want to be compared with that. You just wanted to be loved and accepted. And it's the same thing we want now. And I guarantee, if you will be willing to begin to love and approve of yourself as you are, a lot of negative stuff is just going to disappear from you, because you won't need it anymore. But see, if we're critical to ourselves, then we have to have things to criticize so we can keep the critical pattern going. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, all right. Who else? Yes, right here.
I've done a lot of work on myself, and I feel like every area of my life is starting to like really take off.
Wonderful.
And I find
That's what happens when you work on yourself.
a lot of fear is coming up, because I feel like nuns used to tell me when I was growing up that the more I suffered, that the better God would love me.
Yes, the more pure
and
you'd be, or
I heard a lot from
holy.
my family that the good die young. So a lot of fears about,
Okay.
I have
So you need
no
to
reason to
suffer
believe
and
it.
want to die young? Is
Yeah,
that
if I get it all, I'll have to suffer and die young. So
Okay,
I keep myself from getting
What do you
it.
get if you suffer and you die young?
I don't know. I guess I feel
Well,
like somehow.
let's follow this, because it's important. If you suffer and you die young, what do you get?
Safety, and from somehow I'm protected from God is protecting me somehow. I feel like. I mean, I feel like I'll get to go to heaven.
You get to go to heaven. Okay. Do you think you could get there some other way?
I hope so.
You know, one of the things we have to remember is that many people tell people negative things in order to manipulate them. They lay guilt on people because it's the easiest way to manipulate you. And if somebody is trying to lay guilt on you, ask yourself, what is it they want? Why are they doing this? What is it they want? Instead of you going into, oh, yes, I'm guilty, I'm terrible, say, what is it they want? And do you really want to give them what they want, or you don't? Now, when you come, lots of parents do this with children because they find it real easy. They probably were raised in a family where they were manipulated by guilt, and they tell people things that, that make them feel less than. And churches are real good at that, because you see, you don't live in the church usually, so they only get you a little while. So they have to give you some heavy numbers that'll keep you in line. And many, many churches do that. But you're not a little child at the moment who needs to be kept in line. You are a grown-up adult, and you have your own mind, and you can figure out what you want to believe. What do you choose to believe? And if you want to believe that, you can, but it seems very limiting to me. So the 3-year-old had to accept that, but the adult doesn't have to. So I would say write those 2 things down. And then when you have time, look at those and say, what do I want to turn those into? How would I like to change that? What would I like that to really be? Because every negative message that you have, you can turn into something positive for yourself. But it's good. You see that when you look in the mirror. It comes up. All right. Okay. Those are good ones. Yes, there was the gentleman right here, and then we'll do this, and then.
I discovered that I was feeling vulnerable, that there was a feeling of being fragile about loving myself. And I think it had something to do with, I'm so used to feeling not loving myself.
Yes, it would. It would be a very fragile thing. You know what it's like when you pick up a newborn baby, and especially if you've never done it before, you look at this thing and you think, oh, I'm going to drop it. It's so fragile. You don't know what to do, and you want to sort of put it in your arms, and you don't know how to do it, because how do you hold the head? And it's the same thing. It's like you have a new baby. And think of it that way, and just, it's a wonderful thing to nurture. Now, if you take that new baby and you drop it, that's probably the end of the baby. But if you hold the baby in any way you can and just nurture it and love it, that baby will grow into something really wonderful. So that's nice. You're at a point where you're just beginning. Got something new to love. And you know how it is when you fall in love with somebody, how wonderful it is and your heart feels so good. Well, when you get that going with yourself, it's the most incredible thing, because other people can leave you, but you don't leave yourself. So many people fight loving themselves, and it's the one thing that's so incredible. Dr. Bernard Siegel, I quote him all the time. He says, love heals. Love is the most powerful known stimulant of the immune system. Love is the big healer. When we can really get down to loving who we are, our life changes, and it's amazing the diseases we don't need. We just don't need them anymore. See, we need dis-ease when we're into punishing ourselves. But when we love who we are, we don't do that. So that's what we need to work on. And what we're looking at today really is the barriers that are in the way. But remember, they're only thoughts, and thoughts can be changed. That's what we're working with. We're working with looking at what is there, realizing that it's a thought, and realizing that it can be changed. Now, resentment. Let's talk about resentment a little bit. It's a biggie for many of us. Resentment is when, anger is fine. Anger is a normal, natural emotion. Babies have it all the time, and you know it when they're angry. But 5 minutes later, they can be totally out of it, and their smile can light up a room because they're in the now. They do it, they express it, they get it over with. Too many of us were raised in families where we weren't allowed to be angry. Anger was not acceptable, except maybe in one person. And so we swallow it down. And swallowed anger becomes resentment. And resentment can lodge in different places in the body, and it literally seethes and eats away at the body and becomes tumors and fears. It becomes tumors and cancers. Cancer and tumors really come from just resentment that is held for a long time, and it eats away at the body. Again, we have to realize that we are the ones that are holding on to it. Nobody else is involved at all. It's something about running the old movie in our mind over and over and over again. And if we want to be free from it, if we want to get out of it, then what we need to do is to go beyond it. But remember, again, resentment is only a thought, and a thought can be changed. We think so many things are solid and we have to have them forever, but we're only dealing with a thought, and this thought can be changed. So many people ask me about how to love yourself. How do you love yourself, Louise? Because I talk about it all the time. So I made a list of how to love yourself. And it's even in poster and postcard form now. But number one on that list of how to love yourself is to stop all criticism. Just stop it, now and forevermore. And make a vow to yourself that you're going to do your very best from now on to stop criticizing, number one, you, and then other people. It'll be a lot easier to stop criticizing other people when you stop criticizing yourself. Now, number two on that list is stop scaring yourself. And here we go into fear. How often do you terrorize yourself with your own thoughts? You get into absolute terror, and it's only coming from your thoughts. Nobody out there is doing a thing. Sometimes it's an old family pattern. Sometimes we get new things. How many people here are absolutely in terror of earthquakes? And how often do you do that to yourself? You know, we find so many ways to scare ourselves. I would like people, when you have time, to make a list of your fears. Make a list of your fears. And then give yourself the opportunity to turn each fear into a positive affirmation. Turn each one into something positive. And remember, always you are in charge. You are always in charge. See, one idle thought doesn't make a whole lot of difference. It's like but thoughts are like drops of water. You drop a drop of water on the table here, and it doesn't mean much. But if you keep dropping and keep dropping and keep dropping, you get, the table becomes awash, and then you get a puddle on the floor, and then you can get a little pond and a lake, and finally you can create an ocean. And with our own thoughts, we can drown in a sea of negativity, or we can float on the ocean of life. And it's up to us. The thoughts we think accumulate. And what sort of puddles are you standing in? Or are you up to here? Or are you up to here and trying to paddle? You know, what are you doing to yourself? When we're willing to change our thinking, we can change our experiences. And it doesn't matter if you've got a big puddle of negative thoughts. You know, you can move over here and create a puddle of marvelous positive thoughts. You can make changes, always. So you want to turn those fear thoughts into positive affirmations. Let them work for you. Yes.
All right, now
Little
I've changed.
closer. Thank you.
Okay, then I said, okay, I've changed my thought. I've changed my thought. And then when I'm unaware, the old thought comes back again.
Okay, all right. And then
And
you
I
say
think,
you're...
well, I haven't learned anything.
Oh, well, that's one way to get yourself stuck.
Yeah, I know.
You hear what a strong affirmation that is? I haven't learned anything.
You know.
You
But
see,
I even forget that that's an affirmation.
we talk about doing affirmations, you know, and that we think of, okay, we'll do affirmations, but what we forget is that every single thought we think and every word we speak is an affirmation. And far too many of them are very negative. Now, it's a normal and natural process that you go a little forward, you come a little back. You go a little forward, you come a little back. It's part of practicing. I don't think there is any new skill that you are going to learn absolutely 100% in 20 minutes. It just doesn't happen. Have you ever tried, do you work a computer?
Not yet.
Okay, how many people here work computers? Okay, do you remember when you first learned that computer and how frustrating it was? I call my computer a magic lady, because when I learn her processes, she works magic for me. But when I won't learn her process, or when I get stubborn, or I get frustrated, I can stomp and scream and cry and do anything I want, and she sits there waiting for me. And it takes practice. And I think very much of learning this stuff is like learning to work a computer. You have to learn the laws and what you need to do. You have to learn how thought works and what affirmations you can do, how when your thought goes out, it comes back to you. And it's the same thing as like in a computer. Garbage in, garbage out. You're going to get the same thing. Now, we're all in a practice period. We're learning what to do. And one of the things we want to learn to do is to stop beating ourselves up. So we learn something, and then we do the old way again. And it's like we test ourselves. How are you going to treat yourself? Are you going to say, oh, I didn't learn anything? Or are you going to say, okay, that's all right. Come on, let's do it the new way. And I think this happens with a lot of things that we do. We learn something and we work on something. And we work on it. And we say, oh, I've got that one worked through. But how do you know if you really have it worked through unless you test yourself? So you bring up the old situation one more time. And you watch which way you go. If you jump right back into the old way of reacting to it, then you know that you haven't really learned that lesson and you need to do more work on it. That's all it means. But if you do react in the new way to the situation, it's like, oh, I've got that one under my belt. Now I can move on to other things.
Maybe something has happened prior, like if I'm on the freeway, I drive 100 miles a day, and there are some cars that are very slow and some cars that are this and that and so on and so on. So I try and say, you know, be calm, flow.
Okay, what do you drive on the freeway 100 miles a day. What do you do as a mental preparation for that?
Well, I have tapes. I listen to Ernest Holmes with their
Yes,
old...
no, but I'm talking about driving the car. What have you created for yourself mentally for this situation?
Oh, not very good.
Not very good. Well, it's no wonder you have the drivers around you that are slow and get in your way. You see, I long ago got over the fact that I was going to be upset or ruin my day because you can't drive. So what I have, my own way that I handle my car. First, I get in and I put love into the car. Put absolute love into the car. And I know that I'm always surrounded by wonderful, competent, good drivers. Everybody around me is a good driver. And therefore, because I don't yell and scream at people, and I don't have that consciousness, I get very few poor drivers around me. They're off bothering the person who's shaking their fist. See, your car is an extension of you, and the people that are around are also extension of where you are. So I would do a little something every morning before you get in your car or as you get in your car. Put love into the car and just send love out to everybody around you on the freeway. See, every situation in our life can be treated so that it really works for us, from the smallest to the biggest. And cars are a big thing. Remember, automobiles and appliances are extensions of ourselves. And when things go wrong, look at yourself. One of these days, I'm going to write a book called Heal Your Automobile. Because if you really think about it, if you start thinking about the parts of the car and the parts of your own body, they absolutely go together. You can think of the last time something happened in your car and what went wrong, and just sort of connect it with yourself and what was going on in your own life at that time.
How do you know when you've forgiven yourself, and how do you know when you've forgiven
Because your
others?
life works. You see, when you really love yourself 100%, every single thing in your life is working. And if things are not working in some area of your life, whatever it is, then that's an area where you're not loving yourself as much as you could. You see, you can turn these old negative thoughts into positive affirmations, like I'm never good enough, or I'll never be good enough, can be turned into I'm wonderful just as I am. Now, it may sound not true to begin with, but remember, if it were true, you wouldn't need to do an affirmation. An affirmation is planting a new seed in the ground. And a seed that's planted in the ground takes a little bit of time. You don't plant a seed in the ground and get instant lily. You get a seed in the ground, and the seed has to germinate, take root, and only after that does that first little shoot come up. And then you have to nurture it. So it takes a little while to continue and to do them. But how much time it is, it depends on how much time you're going to give it. Now, a lot of people want to do affirmations, and they will do affirmations maybe even 10 minutes in the morning, you know, which is sort of a lot. You sit down and do your affirmations for 10 minutes, or you write them so many times. What are you doing the rest of the day? You leap in your car and you say, that son of a bitch? You know, it's like you've blown the whole thing. Doing the affirmations helps. But as every thought is an affirmation all the time, What are we doing the rest of the time when we're not actually doing our affirmations? And that's the stuff we have to watch. Got to watch your thoughts. Now, when you find yourself in a negative thing, ask yourself, just step back a little bit and say, ooh, now is this criticism? Is this resentment? Am I into fear? Is this guilt? Start to observe what you're doing instead of beating yourself up for doing it. And saying, okay, I don't have to do this. Now I can do this another way. You see, if you really believe that nobody ever loves you, you can turn that into, my life is filled with love and joy. And that new seed, as you put it in the ground, may feel very strange. You look at the seed, you know, and you think, I mean, if you look at a tomato seed, it doesn't look like a tomato plant. It looks like a funny little dried seed. And so is that affirmation. You know, my life is filled with love and joy. And you may even be putting it into sort of rocky soil. And you need to make a little space for it there. So it can be, so then you can repeat it. But if you keep repeating it, you will change that all of that. And lots of times, we're stuck in, again, I say this, the limitations of our parents. We're still stuck in what they're doing. And we forget that we're grown-up people now, and we can choose our own things. Lots of times people have the same illnesses as their parents. It's like the good little child wants to have the same thing that mommy or daddy did. But it's not necessary. The number of people that now have cancer that run in the families is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, cancer is not hereditary, and it's not catching. And yet it'll run in families. Okay, let's talk about guilt a little bit. Guilt, the big one, that big, heavy one that we all carry. You know, guilt never solves anything. It never solves anything. If you've really done something that you don't approve of, that you think wasn't very good, don't do it anymore. Just stop it. Let it go. But don't walk around under a whole thing of guilt. And don't try to manipulate other people with guilt. You know, you don't want to lay guilt on other people, because if you're doing that, remember, everything you give out comes back to you. So you want to change that. You want to give out only wonderful stuff. Remember, there are like 4 basic premises that I work with. What we give out, we get back. Whatever you give out, it doesn't matter. You're going to get it back. So if you give out a lot of negativity, a lot of anger, a lot of criticism, a lot of guilt, guess what you're going to have in your life? Experiences that fulfill anger and guilt and criticism and things like that. But if you give out love and joy and praise to other people, that's going to come back to you. That's going to come back. On a physical level, guilt always looks for punishment, and punishment creates pain. When I used to work with people privately, I always knew that if somebody came in with a lot of pain, they were dealing with a lot of guilt that they were carrying, a lot of old guilt. Let's talk just a little bit about guilt now. Yes?
I have a middle-aged son.
Yes.
And I feel guilty, even though I have had your book for 3 months and I work with it, but I also procrastinate.
Well, procrastination to me is just a form of not loving yourself.
But I look at him, I see I was a very withdrawn child and an adult, and I see the same thing in him, and as I say, he's middle-aged. I'm sure he's not quite as much as I was, but I feel guilty because I was too strict with him.
You did the best you could coming from where you came from. And remember, he chose you as a mother before he came in. So he knew what you were going to give him.
I'm almost in tears right now.
Yes, it's all right. He knew the life that he was going to have when he came to you, and he wanted you specifically so that you would do what you did. Now, his thing is to overcome that, and you can't do that for him. But if you really want to help change your son, the best way to do that is for you to learn to love yourself. Because as you do it, it's going to rub off.
I've known this, but I haven't accepted it. Evidently, I said it's phony, but I know better. I haven't let go of it.
Instead of wasting energy with him, saying, you know, oh, it's such a shame that he's this way, and I'm sorry, and you know, I did a bad job or something. That's wasted energy, because that does nothing for nobody. It doesn't help your son, and it certainly doesn't help you. It makes you just get smaller, because that's a burden. So if you can begin to take that time, and every time you find yourself saying something like that, say, no, I don't want to say that anymore. I'm going to love myself. And if you do nothing more than that, you'll start to shift that pattern. You may not know exactly how to love yourself, but you're willing to love yourself.
Well, I know that I have not, I knew before I ever heard of this, if I didn't like to look in the mirror. And today it came up, and I thought I had worked through that. And when you started with the mirror thing, I thought, well, sure. Then once I said, you're a phony, you to myself. I was a phony because I didn't love myself.
Are you willing to learn?
I'm trying to learn.
No, you can't try.
Thank you.
You can do it, or you can't do it, or you won't do it. But you see, you can just be willing. Just be willing.
I have something that's pushing me, and that's pain.
Okay, well, see, the pain is from your chronic guilt.
Yeah.
See, it isn't worth it. When we hold on to these patterns, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
That's why.
So your lesson is to love yourself. See, your lesson is not to heal your son. You didn't come to this planet to heal your son. You came to this planet to love yourself. And he came to love himself. And you can't do it for him like he can't do it for you. See, I can hear you in there. Well, if he'd just love himself, then I could love myself. It doesn't work that way.
I cut the string as far as pulling on him. He brought me here today, and I said that it would be nice if you'd care to go. So he said, I'll see you later. And so that's okay. I've reached that point, but it's taken me over 70 years to do that.
Well, then acknowledge yourself for the growth that you have made.
Thank you.
You know, acknowledge yourself. That's wonderful. So, you know, we have these berries, and what are the antidotes for them? The antidotes to me are really love and forgiveness and letting go of the past. And it sounds simple. It is simple. It's not always easy, but it's very simple. To love ourselves, to be willing to forgive, and to let go of the past. All right. Yes, this gentleman here.
I read someplace some woman said that she's very careful about what she thinks, the thoughts that she sends out during the day, because she doesn't want them coming back to sit on her chest at night.
Well, that's one of the things we need to realize is that these thoughts that we think go out from us and come back to us. But in addition to that, they also join with like-minded people. So every time you do a resentment number, your thoughts are going out and connecting with other people who are into resentment. Every time you're into fear and you would do a fear number on yourself, your thoughts are going out and connecting with other fearful people. It's the same thing with criticism. It's the same thing if you're judgmental or prejudiced. If you're a judgmental person, if you're into prejudice, your thoughts are going out from you and connecting with like-minded people. On the other hand, every time you meditate, that is going out from you and connecting with other people on the planet that are meditating. Every time you do a visualization for healing your body, you are connecting with other people out there that are also doing this work. Every time you do something positive, every time you wish the planet well, you are connecting with other people that would like to help heal the planet. So you also want to think of, you know, what sort of like-minded people do I want to connect with? You see, we're at a very delicate balance of power right now. We've got the nuclear stuff, we've got holes in the ozone layer. I mean, we have incredible stuff going on. And we can either destroy the planet or we can help to heal it. And if you take 2 minutes once a day just to do a little visualization for the healing of the planet, you are sending out wonderful positive energy that's going to connect with other people out there all over the planet that are doing the same thing. We can destroy our world, we can destroy our bodies, we can do all sorts of things, or we can heal ourselves, we can heal our communities, and we can heal the world. It's up to us. And it all begins here. Now, some people are wonderfully active and they go out and do things to save the planet, and that's marvelous. But each one of us has an ability to help heal this planet. And we can do that just by the way we use our minds. So I would suggest that each one of you take a minute, even if it's 1 minute a day, after you've done your own affirmations, your own work for yourself, and send something out for the planet. In fact, you might pick a little place on the planet that you would like to help heal. And it could be something very far away and exotic. It could be Nicaragua or the Soviet Union or Siberia or whatever. Or it could be right around the corner here in West Hollywood or someplace. But take that and say, this is my place, and I'm going to help heal this. And once a day, you can take 3 or 4 minutes, or you could just have one positive thought that you send to that place, and you see it peaceful, you see people eating well, you see people fulfilled and happy, you see it wonderful. You could take a moment every day to see the end of AIDS on this planet. Just visualize it. Visualize either you seeing it on television or hearing it on the radio or reading the cover of Time magazine or something. Cure for AIDS found. Put some positive effort into this because we have the power. You see, we're incredibly powerful people. We have our minds, and we're learning what to do with our minds these days. We're learning that you can send things out, and it really comes back to us multiplied. All right? Okay, there's somebody way in the back here. Put your hand up because Tom doesn't know where to go.
I feel like I'm going backwards, but I really need to hear what you have to say about visualization. I've been trying to use it on myself to cure my cancer, and sometimes I feel like I'm not doing it right.
Well, would you share with me your visualization?
Well, I try to imagine, to picture the good killer cells in my body attacking the cancer.
Okay.
And taking it away. But when I'm through with my visualization, I always get doubts that I haven't done it correctly.
Okay. Is this something that you've done in your life a lot, doubted that you haven't done it right? Are you a killer person? No. Well, then I would suggest that perhaps you change your visualization, because if you're using killer cells and you're not a killer person, it may not work. When I had my own cancer, I used the visualization of cool, clear water washing the diseased cells out of my body. And you may need a visualization that's a little more gentle. Perhaps these, whoever's handling the cancer cells could come in and lovingly carry them away. Something that would not be so offensive to you on another level. Now, on the other level, this whole thing about doubt. How many people here deal with doubt? Okay, fine. All right, let me give you an image for doubt that's a little bit different than maybe what you think. You know, I like to think of the subconscious mind down here. This is your subconscious mind. This is where everything goes. And ever since you've been a little child, every message that you've had, everything you've done, all the experiences that you've had, everything you've said has gone into these filing cabinets down here. And I like to think of lots of little messengers down there. And when you think a thought or you have an experience, the message goes down, they grab the message, they look at it, and they put it in the appropriate file. And for a long time, you have perhaps been building up files that say, I'm not good enough, I'll never make it, you know, I don't do it right. I mean, you're getting absolutely buried under these files. And then all of a sudden, you do an affirmation that says, I'm wonderful and I love myself. And it goes down, and they pick up this thing, and they say, what is this? Where does it go? We've never seen this before. So what they do is they call doubt. Doubt, come over here and go up and see what's going on. So doubt picks up the message and comes up to you and says, hey, look at this. You know, you've always been saying this, and here it is. And you can react one of two ways. You can go, oh, you're right, I'm terrible, I'm no good, I'm sorry, that's not the right message, and go back to your own old things. Or you can say to doubt, thank you for sharing. And this is See, don't treat doubt as an enemy. Treat doubt as a messenger that's a friend. And thank doubt for coming up and looking at you and saying, now that was the old message, but this is the new message. Now go down and start a new file, and there's going to be lots of these coming through. And if you look at doubt that way and begin to treat doubt that way, then doubt becomes your friend. You see, we need to change our thinking, because changing our thinking changes our reality. So if we can change what we think, we're going to change our experiences. So let's know for ourselves now that life is a joy. Make these some personal laws for you. Life is a joy. Let yourself this be true for you. Let's know that we are safe. I am safe. I am safe. And I am loving and loved. I am loving and loved. Let's know for ourselves that it's easy to forgive. Let's know for ourselves that we have glowing health. I have wonderful glowing health. And that we prosper wherever we are. And that all is well in our world. All is well in our world.